We okay? Yeah, okay. So, look, this is the final part of this afternoon session, and I'm delighted that we're joined by a number of our female elected councillors. And we're joined to my left here by Councillor Deirdre Ferris, and also joined by Councillor Marie Maloney, and here to my right, joined by Councillor Norma Moriarty and Councillor Aoife Thornton. So really, this part of this afternoon session, we're just going to have a conversation, okay? I have some questions that I'm going to chat to the councillors that I have to ask or whatever. And then also, before this afternoon session, we invited members of the public to submit some questions, so we're going to go through those, and also again from the floor, if we do have some questions we're going to take the opportunity to go through those as well. All right, so look, the first question that I'm going to kick off with and I might put this question maybe to Aoife, maybe as a starting point or and I suppose Aoife, the question I would ask you is that, you know, as a public representative, the challenges around balancing everything from a responsibilities perspective, you know, being in public office with, you know, work, family commitments, or so on, can be a challenge. So I suppose, how do you balance those responsibilities?
Okay, we have to turn that one off, I'd say. Oh, yeah. So it's lovely to be here and really nice to meet you, and to all the candidates, the very best of luck. And keep the head down for the next couple of weeks, you'll get there. You probably feel at the moment like it's never going to end, but it does. And look, on the life balance, I've 3 children, and they were pretty much all born during the last 10 years of my council term. And like anybody with children or other family commitments, or caring for another family member or whatever, there's always going to be a bit of a juggle, and the juggle changes over the years, and I'm no different to anybody else, like Norma or anyone else who's trying to juggle, you know, that family life, but you have to do it. And I suppose for me, what I found the hardest was the uncertainty and of every day being different, and the hours every day being different. But I wouldn't discourage anybody to get into politics. It's just for my particular family circumstances, you know, 10 years of that, I just had to leave it at that. I have a child with special needs that needs kind of just structure. But, you know, with the family balance, it's possible. It's so doable. The variety is incredible. It's such a satisfying job. And so, like in any other job, that sense of variety and fun and hard work and job satisfaction and fulfillment will help you, you know, find a balance and get through it. So, like, you do need to find a time to go for a walk, fresh air, and all the usual when you're working. And you need to set down, I suppose, that structure for yourself, because, like, for me and for, you know, I have a family that depend on me, so I need to make sure that I'm getting some bit of time in the day for myself so that I can keep all the other show on the road. But I suppose, like the weekends, the night time, the early mornings, you know, you do get calls at all times of the day, but there are pockets then of free time, so don't be afraid of it. That does come as well. So I suppose what I would say is, you know, try your best canvas, try and get in. If you get in, take it like any other job, work hard, find a bit of time for yourself in it all, enjoy it. In that hard work, you'll find great fulfillment, and find the things that you're interested in, and you know, try and make a difference in those areas, and then the job is very satisfying. So I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, perfect, Aoife, thank you. Deirdre, what would you answer to that question?
Well, I disrupted the whole meeting a little while ago to run out to organise pickups for my 2 teenagers. No, look, I suppose my biggest problem is I don't shut off. And I would always, and it was one of the first things that was said to me by my sister. And she said, Deirdre, get a second phone and have your own time. Have your own time. I got the second phone, and after a year of not using it, I cancelled the contract. It was fine. You know, it is what it is. I have my free time is my free time, and I'd often share book recommendations with Norma at the end because we're both readers, and that's my time. I can shut everything off when I read it. But as Aoife has rightly pointed out, there is some great job satisfaction in what we do. We predominantly, outside of the meetings and outside of policy decisions, we advocate. We advocate on behalf of people, human beings who are having difficulties or issues within their lives. And when you can get something across the line, the satisfaction and the fulfilment, as Aoife rightly said, is something that stays with you. I did actually dance around my kitchen one day when a person I'd been advocating hard for after 12 years in the housing list to get the empty house that was down the road from her. And I danced around the kitchen. That's how fulfilling it felt. And it's almost, it's very emotive, this job. It's, you feel you're dealing with people, and sometimes they're at their most vulnerable, they're at their most distressed. But being able to do anything at all in the roles that we have, and I suppose with the connections and the context that we are able to develop over time, it is probably the greatest part of this job. I would never deter anybody from going into it, but I would highly advise to listen to the advice of my sister and get a second phone and have your own time and learn to shut off.
Perfect, thank you. Marie, if I was to ask you, what do you enjoy most about being a councillor?
There's a lot of things to enjoy. There is a lot of things that are hard, there's no doubt about it. There's a lot of things that are a challenge. But for me, the sense of helping someone, the sense of, it may only be helping someone get a medical card. My area of expertise is actually outside of the remit of a council, really, which is social welfare. And I do a lot of work on social welfare. I do oral hearings with people. I do their appeals. I help them, Sometimes people, if they literally tick a box on a form, it can make a difference. Simple thing. But I sit with them, I go through them, I help them fill up the forms. But this sense of satisfaction that we get from the job, not just what the people get, but what we get, it's amazing. I have experienced politics from a few different perspectives because, number one, I started off as a secretary to a TD, which I spent doing for 15 years. And I used to be able to go home at night, and as I said before, bar an odd meeting, and I'd be there while the kids were young. And then as it rolled on and moved on, I got elected to Kerry County Council first, and then I ran the general election. And I missed out on that one, and I then subsequently contested the Senate election. I wasn't appointed, I got elected to the Senate, and I spent 5 years in Dublin, and then I came back, and for personal reasons I certainly didn't want to be in Dublin anymore, and I got re-elected to Kerry County Council, so I had to go out twice and win back the council seat on behalf of the Labour Party, and I did it, and the satisfaction in doing that is great. But there are challenges, and there's no doubt about it. It does interfere with family life, and there's no point in saying there isn't. It doesn't. As I was being interviewed on Radio Kerry there a few minutes ago, I told them that when I was in Dublin, my first grandchild was born. And I was missing out on that. I was missing out on her life. And my husband used to mind her 1 day a week. And when I come home from Dublin, she hardly knew me. She hardly knew me. Because even though you come down on Thursday night, Friday, it might be the Dingle Peninsula, or it might be the Iveragh Peninsula. You were out doing clinics for the whole day out, around meetings at night time and things. So it does interfere. So you do need back up in the home, very much so. Thankfully I can say I have a fantastic husband who is my rock, and I can tell you when I was in Dublin there might have been no clean clothes to wear if it wasn't for him. He was great. But it's all the little practical things, like I know that some of the men, when they were telling us, they'd come in and the clothes would be washed for them, and then when they're going up to Dublin, the suitcase was packed for them again, going off. And they can literally, and this is one thing I find the difference between male and female in these roles is, a man can wear a suit, and he can wear it 52 weeks of the year and nobody blinks an eye at it, but we have to have different jackets and different things, because people say, does she have anything else to wear? And that is the reality of it, like. So there are all those little things that kind of you have to put a lot of time into, you know. Yeah. So, but as I say, the satisfaction in the job, and I would encourage all of them here and the candidates that are here today, and I'd say to you, keep at it, you'll get there eventually. And it is, and when you do get elected, you are treated exactly the same as any male man or any male person in the room, in the council. They treat you all the same. You get the same services, you get the same attention from all the staff in Kerry County Council. So there is no difference when you're in there. It's getting in there that is the difficult thing. But look, I just say to you, keep at it, ladies, and I wish you all the very best of luck in the forthcoming elections.
Marie, that's great words of encouragement, and I suppose, you know, even so far, whatever in the conversation, I suppose kind of having that commitment and that determination and wanting to succeed and wanting to achieve, obviously are very, you know, key motivators in terms of actually, you know, looking for success in politics. And it doesn't always happen the first time, and maybe it doesn't happen the second time, and maybe it might happen in one political arena but not in another arena. So I suppose, Norma, it comes then, whatever, to maybe some advice that you might give to people that are, you know, considering going down the political path. And I suppose from sharing from your experience, if you were to say to people here today, look, this is the advice that I would give you.
That's a very big question. The advice that I give you, get comfortable shoes, definitely, anyway, number one. And I constantly have arguments with my sisters when they see me going out the door. You've much nicer boots than that. And I said, I'm not standing in 10 hours in those. So you do have to do those pragmatic things. Look, I love the job. I have to say, I still love the job. And you ask what are the great things about it. It's the people that you meet in every walk of life, and they come into you, and you're not going to be able to help them in every single query. But if you give them your best for every single query, that's all you can do, and they will genuinely appreciate that. And there are certain things that aren't achievable, but make an effort to get to the point where you discover, okay, that actually isn't achievable. You know, don't dismiss something. Talk to people, listen to them, because they have come to you to do that. Like our clinics, you know, I often wondered when growing up, you know, why do they call them clinics? And in a way, it's and you know, even as a councillor, and people do actually see you as a councillor in all of its meanings. You know, they will confide things in you that they're not going to confide in other people. And, you know, be very respectful of that. There's a confidentiality around that. There's an attention around that. That's a privilege that somebody trusts you to do that. So just be aware of that as well. And honestly do your best for those people. It is, like most of my work life, I was a teacher. I'm now actually finding myself doing reps for my past pupils. I'm feeling a little bit older because they now have children, but and you know, again, I've actually seen these people from childhood now up into adulthood, and you're trying to help them. And again, that's a privilege. That's a genuine privilege, and they remind me of the things that I did in the classroom too. By the way, they don't forget you. We live in a stunning county, and again, that's another thing I'll say. While you're going around canvassing, take a few minutes to actually enjoy where you're canvassing as well. You know, I'll be back in Bowler's Head in 2 days' time. And some of you will see it, some of you won't. It's incredible. You know, I'll be on Valentia Island. I'll be places now like, you know, Lahern and Letter and Townlands, Kimego, beautiful townlands, the names of them even. Like, take the time to enjoy where you're going as well. You're going to meet people in incredible places. You'll actually get to know your county better than you ever would have done before. And take that in and treasure it. And listen to the people on the door. You'll also encounter people who might not have spoken to somebody in the last 2 or 3 days. And actually they will welcome you in, and they will want to talk to you, and try and spare them that extra few minutes to have that conversation with them. Okay, and they will reward you, I guarantee you. If they won't give you the number one, they certainly will acknowledge you. But and even sometimes, you know, you'll meet people who are in bad form, or they've had a very, you know, because we are meeting farmers who are actually struggling at the moment with very difficult weather conditions, with a lot of stress, an awful lot of stress, and they will need to vent. Okay, they're venting. They're not giving out to you, they're venting about the stresses and the difficulties. So be aware of that. You can separate that from the angst that they might feel, and be able to talk to them about it. And if there is something you can do to help or point them in a direction, of course you will try and do that. But it's an extraordinary job, and it is a privilege to have it. So I genuinely wish you all the best of luck. And I do think the women approach it probably slightly different to men. And it is, as Marie says, once you get there, you're the same as everybody else. But I think there maybe, and again, maybe I'm profiling here, but there's a sense of maybe some of those softer skills that are really important in dealing with people and helping them, and never be afraid to use those as much as possible as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Norma. And I think, the words you use there, trust and privilege, it is a privilege to be in that position where someone trusts you enough to come and to talk to you, sometimes about very sensitive and personal matters or whatever. And I suppose it is a privilege to be able to then help people navigate them through whatever difficulties or whatever they might have. You just touched on there, Norma, just maybe about maybe characteristics or attributes, perhaps, whatever that females have, that maybe, better lend themselves to looking at maybe certain aspects of a role in politics or whatever. And Deirdre, I was just going to ask you, from your perspective, whatever, do you think there are any sort of unique perspectives or contributions, perhaps, that women bring to politics?
It's actually, as Norma was talking, and it hit me as if the only female representative in the Tralee LEA. Women, in very vulnerable situations, women who may fear being alone with a man as a result of domestic violence. I think that level of trust in them to be able to feel comfortable enough or in some way safe enough to come to me because they can't go to a man. I think that in itself is probably one of the most important facets of having female representation, because you are dealing with people who have an innate fear of a man because of a past trauma, because of existing domestic violence within the home, and they need somebody they can trust and somebody they do not fear. And that sometimes it's only a starting point. They're just trying to figure out something. What do I do? What can I get? Can I get a home because I have tied up in a family home that's in ownership, or loads of different things. But the fact that they've taken that courageous step to go and reach out, but the fact that there's somebody there is by far the most important thing. Somebody they feel safe enough to go to. So for me, Breed, that's probably one of the most important elements from our perspective here as local representatives. That's probably the start. In a lot of cases then you would deal with, and I think it's important to note that you still have that, I suppose, male fear of the males feeling vulnerable amongst their own gender, and you might find that men would be more open to speaking to women about difficulties that is upsetting them because they feel they can't. So I think that there's that element. They see women as an easier person to discuss their private business with and to get emotional about it, and I think that's something that, and Norma said the word privilege, it is probably the greatest privilege that somebody trusts you at the most difficult time in their lives.
And Marie, you're nodding in agreement.
Absolutely. When I was in the Senate, I did a lot of work. Actually, I was told I was the first person to bring to the House, to the floor of both Oireachtas houses, the issue of domestic violence. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of, even here in Tralee and nationally, before I moved my private member's motion on it. You learn an awful lot, I can tell you, by talking to women and by listening to their stories. And you have to build up the trust. The people that come to you with those issues need to know that you are confidential and that you will keep whatever stories you hear to yourself. And I think that is very important in politics, is the trust that you build, that people, you build for people, and that the confidentiality, and you don't talk about it. And like I would often say, if a woman came into me or a man, and I went outside on the street and I met that husband or wife of that person, I wouldn't even say, well, Joni was into me this morning, or I met Mike today, or whatever. If they said to me, Joni was into you today, I'd say, yeah, they were. But I would never tell, not even the closest relative of a person who came into my office Absolutely not. I think you need to build up that confidence. And just even, as you say, bringing a different perspective to the table. I'll take just one small little example, right? At Christmas time, we do a bit of free parking for Christmas shopping and things. And usually, and like in Cllr now, and I know these lads over here will be all looking at me, but I won't say it, they can close their ears. They seem to tend to give the car parks furthest away from the shops to the freebies. And like people, at a debate at it once, certain male politician says, well, sure, there's walk will do them good to come down. I said, look at it from this perspective. A mother with a buggy, or a child, a toddler by the hand, and a child in a buggy, and her bags of shopping. That's not practical. That's not practical to them to get to walk to the faraway car park. Simple things. The men don't seem to think of those things, whereas a woman, we do. We think of that. I also try to encourage family spaces, you know, for parents and children in the car parks. But the public car parks, believe it or not, there's no jurisdiction over it. They can't put him in because you can't police him in the public car parks. But the trouble of getting a buggy out of a car and getting a child out of a car seat and putting him into the buggy in these tight little spaces, it's crazy. But if male, and I'm sorry, no guys, just the guys in the room, just don't seem to see that. Yeah. Whereas as women, we know what it's like. We've encountered it, and we see the problems with things. But simple things like that, you can bring a female perspective into it. That's only just a small thing, but there are a lot of other issues too.
And I suppose it leads on to the whole area of diversity, you know, because when we have different, representatives from our community, you know, sitting around the council representing, you know, different cohorts of our community, you know, we get that different perspective, don't we, in terms of what are the different challenges, be it male or female, be it someone or whatever who's only just come to the country, someone who's Irish, lots of different perspectives can be presented. So I suppose, Aoife, it just leads kind of to my next question around, I suppose, you know, the more diverse our council is, the more, I suppose, views we can hear, the more opinions we can hear. I suppose, you know, the better we'd say the different communities are representatives in terms of our, you know, their concerns, their views and so on. I suppose, would you have any views or insights as to, I suppose, how we can work towards making our council truly diverse to represent now what we have in terms of a very diverse community in our county?
Can I just pick up on one point there, because I just really would like to get it across, you know, that whole trust and meeting people and everything. When you're going out canvassing and you're meeting people, I just feel like after 10 years in the council, I would like to see this. Be safe yourselves as well. Do you know, when you're going out meeting people, I'm sure you all agree, into people's homes, into people's, you know, just be careful yourselves as well, because as women you can be vulnerable. And, you know, I'm sure all of us have different stories and situations that we could, you know, tell you about where we've put ourselves in situations we probably shouldn't have. Like, for example, we don't have an office in Listowel. And so, you know, I would have gone out and met people. Now I've kind of changed the way I do that, and I meet them in public places. And that's, I just want to say that to you as you're out and about, and just be safe about it. Diversity for sure. It's critical. We need to be more diverse. Like, if you look at, you know, we need young, we need old, we need different minority groups, we need men, we need women, you know, and the more diverse for sure and certain, the better it is, the more input you have into policies from different perspectives, different life experiences, different viewpoints. I mean, look, we've a good, there's good debate in the council, different parties, independents, non-parties. Like, what I would say probably about that is the most, obviously, and we know it anyway, but the most important part of all of it, and we were just discussing it outside the door, is respectful debate. You have as much diversity as you can, with as many different viewpoints as you can have, and then with that, your respectful debate, and I think out of that you're going to have your best result, where you can have a mix of all of that. So how do you encourage more of that? I do think, you know, I don't think, I would say 90% of people haven't a clue what we're doing every day. And that probably means that you know, we're losing a lot of people that may get involved otherwise, be it from minority groups or whatever. So I do think there is a piece of work that could be done. I'd be happy to actually be involved in that, even outside of politics, to encourage more people to get in. And I do think, you know, whether it's in the paper, on the radio or whatever, what are you actually doing all day? Like this morning, I was chairing the LCDC and the LAG, and Marie's on it, you know, about leader funding and the different fundings in the county, and arising out of that, then you're on different other subgroups. And then I'm here today. I would say the general public have no clue. They just think I'm there for potholes and whatever else. They've no idea. 90% of people, I would say. So there is definitely a piece of work there in explaining the role while not canvassing.
Yeah.
Do you know that you're just doing it to just communicate with people what it is, and maybe stem a bit of interest from that to all the different groups then, you know, as well.
Excellent, very good. And again, I think a takeaway from this is it's that whole communication piece around the different activities, the council, the committees, the councillors, and even that whole sort of profiling of people for role models or whatever for the future, because we need people to be interested in politics and to get involved in politics. And, you know, I think it'd be probably even an interesting piece of work, whatever, if we went in and we spoke to a group of students in transition year, you know, how many put their hands up and say, yeah, I see myself involved in politics or whatever into the future. I'm not too sure there'd be too many hands or whatever that would be going up, you know. Yeah. So, Norma, if you were back day one and you were considering entering into politics, what advice would you like that someone would have given you?
I suppose looking back on it, I've often spoken to people about when I got the phone call to consider, because a vacancy arose, you know, before the 2014 council elections, and it was January, and I got a phone call, and I was standing at my desk at the 11 o'clock break. The students were streaming out, making plenty of noise, and I took the call, and I can't repeat the first two words that came out of my mouth, but it was in the negative, not a hope. And then subsequently people said, you know, consider it. The wisest thing I was told was just take 24 hours to consider it and discuss it with the people around you. I was doing the work anyway, to a large degree, and I would imagine everybody here is involved in their residents association, their GA clubs, their tidy towns groups, the people who show up to get things done. Okay, and you are therefore a natural leader, because you're a leader in your own communities, and to encourage those people to get involved as much as possible. To go back to the day one of being a councillor, I'd actually have loved the session that we had this morning, because I genuinely hadn't a clue about putting down motions or questions. And by the way, your party colleagues won't tell you anything about that, because once you get elected, they become one of your main competitors. So I spent a good number of months learning that. Quite frankly, I had to learn that. So that was a very, very good session this morning. That was very helpful. And it's just about, because it, you know, again, like you come from it with your perspective of having been, like I was involved in IRD Water with the local community development group. I did have the patience about how slow things are. Deirdre has referenced before about one of the things she finds frustrating is how slowly things move, and they do move slowly. If you want to get something changed or done, it does take time. You tell people that a road quite obviously needs to be done. We'll get it in the next 3-year roads programme, and if you're in year 2 of that, that's frustrating, okay, because there's a process and a length of time that has to go. But as somebody who had come from the community development side of it with our local community development group, I was actually used to that. I knew things took time. Okay, so I'd have patience around that. You have to get the processes correct. You have to make sure that your applications line up with the local development plans, whether it's local, either the LECP or the local area plans. These are the nuts and bolts, and this is where being a bit of a policy nerd helps, okay? Because you'll be able to help the groups, the applicant bodies, to put the application together in a way that's successful. And I know people, and there'll be a lot of people that we'll be campaigning with now who'll say, it's too slow, and they'll get frustrated. And if I get in there, I'll shout loud enough and I'll get it done quickly. You won't, okay? You just go hoarse. The process takes what it takes. And it is actually about sticking to it and being patient and building up those relationships. And quite frankly, there isn't anything sexy about it. It's just hard work. That's basically it. Honest to God, that's it. But beware of those who'll tell you they'll get it done in a flash, because that's nonsense. They won't.
Keep selling it there, Norma. Keep selling it. It's a very sexy job, folks, okay?
Thanks, Norma. And you know what? I suppose day one, if you got that advice, maybe in terms of expectations people have, you know, when maybe they get elected or whatever, and they think, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change the world, you know, and it's just, I suppose, to be realistic yourself, because maybe you might end up getting frustrated yourself if you say, gosh, I didn't make the progress I thought I was going to make, or whatever. So I suppose it is about being realistic in terms of what one can achieve. I think that's definitely take away from it. Maybe if we might open it to the floor, are there any questions or whatever that people would like to ask or whatever from the floor? Just if you can take the mic there, yeah, and...
Hello, my name's Caroline Kennelly and I'm a candidate in the Cllr LEA. Firstly, I want to say that I admire all women on the panel, amazing women. And I'd love to join Marie in the Cllr LEA, another woman for Cllr. But how do I put across going forward my softer skills? You know, like there's very important aspects to it, housing, infrastructure, the potholes, which people always remember you got filled or whatever. But how do you put across those softer skills? Like, how can I put across to people that I also would help with farms, and I'd also listen, and I'd also direct you in the areas that need done? Because when you are on Radio Kerry or you're on press or whatever, you are kind of on about the housing, or you're on roads and stuff like that. So have you any advice around that, please, for someone who's brand new doing this? I work in Pat Daly's office as well, so I've loads of those skills, but no one would really know that in Killarney as such, because I'm here in Tralee, and I love the job as well. And thanks for answering the first question. That was actually my own question, so Aoife and everyone answered it brilliant. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm going to hand over to Marie first. No, it's okay.
Caroline, thank you for the question. Caroline, you're in a very similar situation to what I was. You are a secretary to a TD. That's where I learned my skills, like you are learning them now. And I guess because you're in Tralee, maybe that the people in Killarney don't know you as well, whereas I was in the Killarney electoral area and they knew me. But it was through that work, I think, that I developed those skills, and that the people knew I had those skills because they were coming into the office. And like the TD, like you know, is not there 3 or 4 days a week, or they're out on the clinic. You're actually doing a lot of the work, and I think the people know that. Like, so I also would say to you, get involved in the community. I do so much voluntary work that if I don't get elected to Kerry County Council on this occasion, I will still have plenty of work to do. I am involved in so much, particularly in healthcare and people with disabilities. I work an awful lot with it. And I think when you are working with disabilities and people who are vulnerable, your soft side, as you call it, does come true, because you have to be that way. You have to have empathy with the people. You have to show them that you really do care and that you don't mind. I mean, at the moment I'm working with Killarney with trying to make Killarney an autistic friendly town, and I'm working with a great group of people there and a great committee, and we're doing a lot of work there. I'm chairperson of Kerry Respite Care, where we put people into the homes working to give the carers respite. I work with the defibrillator group in Kilcommon, getting defibrillators for the community. I'm on the board of Ballyspillane Family Resource Centre. All these are outside of the council now. These are all my voluntary work, like. And I think when you are working within the community, you build up your name, you build up your reputation, and people will see you as a worker, and that you do things for the good of the community and not for yourself. There's no financial gain for me in any of those. I'm on boards that I never get a penny for. Even when I'm on the ETB, I've never claimed 1 penny for travelling to the ETB. I like to do things. I like to give back to the community, and I like to help the community. Since I left school, I have been involved in voluntary work. I was a scout leader. I spent 30 years delivering Meals on Wheels in Killarney. And that's the way I got known. And I think people know that I am a worker, and that's why I got the vote. Having said that, now maybe I mightn't get it the next time round, but I'm hopeful because I work hard, and I hope that comes across. But for you, Caroline, I see where you are because I've been there and done that. And you asked a while ago about advice when you want to go to local elections. If I had got the advice, run in the other direction. At the time, I thought I might have taken it, but I'm so glad nobody did give me that advice, because it's been a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful journey. And even if I was to never go any further, I have got so much out of it, and I hope I have given so much back to people as well. So I feel that I have done the job of work, and I'm proud of what I've done. It's an honour. It's an absolute honour. Just think about it, that you go out there and you ask people to vote for you, and if it's only 100 people, or if it's 1,000 people, that they put their trust in you. They give you number one, to say of all the candidates that's running, you're number one for them. It's an amazing, amazing feeling. And it's, you know, even if you don't get elected, to think that so many people put their trust in you. And I hope that that's, for me, where it came from. You will get your softer side across, as you call it. You will. It will happen for you, Caroline, because you are doing the work anyway, and people will think. I think if you put your name on the ballot paper in Tralee, that because this is where you work, you might, you might find that that's... No. I'm trying to hold on to my...
Trying to kick me out as well.
hold on to my seat. That's what I'm trying to do.
We'll keep it neutral.
We have to be honest. A little bit of honesty. No, but I'm just saying that people would know you so much better. But you might surprise everybody, and you might say, I'm known in Cllr is a lot better than Tralee. But we will see in time. And look, the best of luck to Caroline. We'll hopefully be on the council together.
Okay, thanks. Norma, would you maybe answer that as well, if you don't mind?
In relation to that question, like Marie used the word empathy, and it is extremely important to be empathetic, okay? And like you will see within the council chamber, you'll see it in the media, there's an awful lot of theatrics involved in this job as well, you know. And I've one particular person in mind now, when I've been chairing some of our meetings, and the motion would come up, and it would be the most important thing. They would say, this is the most important thing to happen. And then the very next one, and this is the most important thing to happen. So there's a lack of consistency around what they perceive as the most important. So there is playing to the audience. There is all of that. But the word consistency, in my view, is one of the more important ones. Be consistent on your positions. Okay? Don't allow yourself to be waylaid, because you will have people who come to you who want you to go one way or the other, what you actually believe in. If you have a perspective on, how local government should be funded, you have a position, don't allow yourself to be waylaid, because I actually do think at the heel of the hunt, they might argue with you, but I think people respect people that stand for things, okay, and not people that flip-flop. So don't be afraid of that. And that allows you then to have your soft skills. You don't have to be overly theatrical, pretending that you're a tough person in this, and you're going to take on the might of X, Y, and Z and something else. You can be who you really are in terms of how you approach people and how you deal with them, but you show your toughness and you show your strength by being steadfast on policy issues and positions like that. And I firmly believe, in spite of all of the difficulties we're having with social media and maybe attention and negativity around the world at the moment, people are fair at the core of it. I genuinely believe people are fair, and if you work for people and you've done your best for people, they will remember that. They honestly will. So.
Thank you. Thanks for that insight. Any other questions? No? I have another question, if that's okay. When you start off, right, and you're elected or whatever, if you're successful and you are elected or whatever to the council, do you think it's a good idea that, you kind of focus on maybe a number of key initiatives or whatever that you hope you're going to achieve maybe over a period of time in the council? or is it sort of, you know, do you end up getting distracted or whatever, maybe with the kind of day-to-day, whatever kind of items or whatever that arise? You know, if you were to give advice or whatever to someone and say, okay, look, you can't do all things at all times, you can't be all things to all people, what advice would you give to people? Deirdre, I might go to you first.
Well, I'm not going to know why you're coming to me, because I was actually co-opted. I've actually never put my face in a ballot paper until this point. I was co-opted following Pat Daly's election in 2020. But what I can say is, based on the makeup of the council and following the local elections, that you are also going to have your internal elections in and around your council appointed boards. It's in those SPC committees where you do have that ability to see amendments and changes to actual local government policy and to Kerry County Council policy, so to speak. But I knew when I was going in that what was very important to me was, in fact, the Kerry coastline, and particularly that of the Tralee MD. I live on the coastline. I'm looking at a natural geographic phenomenon outside my door, which is a tombola, which has been breached because of storm surges. And I just felt that that's something that was very important to me as a local representative of the Banna, Feenet, Barrow, and Tralee Bay Harbour areas, and the Barrow Harbour and the Tralee Bay areas. So that's something I've actively worked on throughout. I have linked in with the community groups, but it's something you can't start and stop. You have to continually keep working. I think Norma intimated earlier my comments outside with the journalist around waiting times, and I have a severe lack of patience, but I have learned to manage my expectations that this is something that is going to be, unfortunately, years in the making, because of funding first and foremost. Feasibility studies, understanding all that before you go in is actually probably one of the best things to have. But on top of that, another thing that I highlighted at the time was mental health would be something I would work actively on throughout before. It's something that's very important to me, and it took 4 years from the time the initiative started, but the Connecting for Life programme has a full interagency committee between the Gardaí, Kerry County Council and the HSE, and that programme has come to fruition as of last week. You know, and it's set your mind at something. You have to look. I knew going in that climate change, or the coastal the Tralee Bay coastal erosion was very, very important to me. And that's something I'm still working on. And that's something that you just have to go in, you know what you need, you know in your local communities where you're from, you know the issues from the canvas, you know the issues throughout the whole county anyway. But that's the only way I can describe. I didn't have the plan before I went in because I was co-opted, but I knew what I wanted to see happen. So I hope that answers your question.
I very much so, and it just shows as well that when you are elected, I suppose the structure within the council enables you to, I suppose, channel your energies into particular areas that are of interest to you, which is a very good opportunity.
Enables or probably probably curtails you a little bit as well, because to be fair, and I think we have to be very honest with the people, we don't have a huge level of autonomy because we're very much hindered by national policy. You know, national policy influences local government policy, and we have to be very cognizant of that too.
But I suppose, though, you know, say, for example, you know, the presentation earlier on, say, for example, we saw the different committees, right? So let's say you have a particular interest in something like education and training. You know, you have an opportunity maybe to participate in something like the Kerry Education and Training Board. So I suppose it's probably just say that there are some avenues or whatever that would be available to you if you did have a particular kind of interest in an area, whatever, through the process. Just one last general question, and then maybe I'm going to finish up by asking all of the panel or whatever a question maybe that they might look at. Aoife, you outlined whatever at the very start of it, or whatever that you've done your term, is it 10 years or whatever? So I suppose, again, just at a forum like this, just to say thank you to you for the last decade of service, and you know, very much appreciated. And it's a big decision or whatever to make, or whatever to say, you know, at a point in time, that, you know, you've decided whatever not to seek re-election, and you know, for the last 10 years, if I was to ask you, if you were to say, look, for you yourself, what was the greatest achievements you felt you achieved as a public representative to inspire others that are considering a role in politics?
I'm no great shakes. I'm a normal human being. I think, I don't know. You could name projects you've been involved in, but I think what's more probably important to me is, honestly, now I'm not just saying this, is like respectful engagement. I could say, the Dale Road, I got it fixed. There was a lot of, cars, and it's important to me. I've lost someone in road traffic accidents, and making our roads safer is so important. But I think, broadly speaking, 10 years of service, I just can't say enough how important in the world we live in today, how crucial it is that we can go in and debate respectfully with each other about really hard issues that we need to go in and talk about. There are, a couple of really difficult issues that we need to go in and talk about nationally and internationally and on a European front that affect so many people on the ground for lots of different reasons. And I think just the most important thing we can all do for each other is go in and respectfully debate whatever it is and be able to leave the anger, the whatever outside the door and come in and I suppose I've had I've been a solicitor for 15 or 16 years or whatever, so I think that training to advocate has helped me go in and be able to kind of hopefully, put together what it is I think should be said for the people I represent in a respectful fashion. And I think respectful engagement works very well. And the council staff are really good. And the only time you'll ever come into trouble is if you're not respectful. And that's when you don't get respect back. And I think once we can do anything once we go in. And I think if I was to leave saying anything, it would probably be that.
Thanks, Aoife. And respect, privilege and trust. They're the three words that are coming up all the time, whatever is part of this conversation. So before we wrap up this session, right, same question to each of you. I'll start with Deirdre to my left. If you were to suggest one initiative that would remove barriers or challenges that women face in terms of entering public life, what would it be?
Crikey, that's a tough question. When you're talking, are you talking local wise or?
If we confine it even to, confine it to overall or whatever, I would say, to encourage more representation or whatever. Yeah. So Aoife will go first. Yeah.
I'm just trying.
If you want to have time to think, because I know what I want to say about this, because the maternity leave thing was, I came in at 34 and I'm leaving at 44, lads, obviously. and on that note, I've kind of learned, I suppose, to come to terms over the last couple of months that there's no problem coming in for 10 years and exiting again, and that we shouldn't view it as something that has to be for life, because I think that's prohibiting people making the decision and coming into politics, and maybe particularly women. And that I think there's a conversation around that to be had, nationally and all that. But the maternity leave, which has now changed, I think, I didn't know coming in there wasn't maternity leave. I really struggled with the fact that there wasn't. And I remember 4 weeks after my second child was born, I was going back to work going, Jesus, this is torture now. And then I had a third one. That wasn't a good idea, but I was lucky enough to have a third child. But I really struggled, and mentally and physically, and it was really, really difficult. And I think that has been a very good change that has come about, that you can hire someone, to come in instead of you. And the online meetings have helped. So again, if there's anyone considering it, or any other women, that helps, because if you do have, you were down as absent when you had a child, which is ridiculous. Now that's, changing. And the council staff were fantastic to me when I had my child. But anyway, that has changed. So there, as much as there are, it still can be difficult. There have been a number of changes that are, that really make a difference. And yeah.
Look, like I said, my children were teenagers when I went into this game, but like Aoife, I remember my sister had her baby on Friday and she was in a council meeting on Monday. And her husband was walking around with the baby because she was nursing herself. And I just thought that was shocking, you know. But overall, I think the proxy being allowed to come in for local councillors, I think at a national level, it's always going to be very prohibitive because of the centralised system that we have with Dáil Éireann and the inability to send somebody in proxy, obviously. And I think that's always going to be quite prohibitive. Initiatives overall, I suppose, I think what's going to be very important is we're going to have to start looking, and we discussed this outside earlier on, is that this job has to be considered a full-time job. People are working full-time, they have a full-time income, and then they're taking up, they're losing some form of financial security in one respect in order to go into do something that they're passionate about, because you're not going to go into this job unless you're passionate about it. You're not even going to try and go into this job unless there's a passion. So we have to start looking at respecting the role that, and we've talked about respect. We have to respect the workload, and we have to make sure that that the councillors are able to do the job. You know, so I think that's probably one of the other initiatives that's probably going to be quite important. And I definitely think that some form of decentralisation. I'm very lucky that when I came in, so did lockdown. So part of that thing is hardly nobody knew what I looked like. They only knew my voice. But online meetings came in. And that made because a lot of our time would have been spent on the road, I would imagine, prior to this, because I do remember travelling with Tralee in between meetings and stuff. But I do think that some form of decentralisation at a national level, because people probably do want to go in and progress through the ranks, you know. So look, they're the two that I feel that are probably very important overall, particularly for women going in.
Thank you.
The question, I suppose, is what do I think are the obstacles? I think being a councillor needs to become a full-time job. Effectively, I've made it my own full-time job because the area I represent is geographically so vast. And those subcommittees that were involved in, and I was in a position where I don't have dependents. I was able to make that choice. But if you were in a position where you had dependents, you certainly couldn't do it on the part-time salary that is there. You know, it has to be properly paid, and then people will be able to do it full-time, which would be good. The obstacles, so I think that is one of the, and I'm linking back again to one of the questions you said there about, you know, what you enjoyed most about it. I had the privilege of being on that subcommittee that drew up the legislation on the maternity leave. And it was one of the best experiences I had in politics, because it was there was a group of councillors and senators from across the country. Minister Peter Burke was actually overseeing it at the time, and I was fortunate enough to be nominated by the Fianna Fáil party to be on that group, and it was such an enriching experience. It really was. I couldn't tell you the party of the people that I was on with, because that did not become an issue. It had absolutely no part in the conversation, but it was really wonderful. And we met online. Actually, we never met in person. We met online ironically, I think it was 9 months, and we produced the legislation at the end of it to deal with maternity leave. But that it was a really, and because it was an all women grouping, and it was just so instructive as to how positively things can be done when you have people focused on doing something for the greater good. In terms of obstacles at national level, something I'd love to see happen are term limits. I would love to see it that you could only serve 2 terms as an Oireachtas member, because I think it would totally change the outlook. It would not be about minding your seat and making sure you stay elected. It would be about using the time that you have to get things done. That's my top and safety word there.
Marie?
Again, as I've already said, when I went into this active politics like this, my children were reared. I don't know, could I have done it if they weren't? My husband was working full time. You do need to be at home, like with your kids, one of you, either my husband or myself, it wasn't always feasible because of his job that he could just take time off. And to be with the kids, I mean, there's homework to be done. You have to have dinners for them when they come in. When my kids were doing and I've only two, but when they were doing either a junior cert or a leaving cert, I swear to God, there seemed to be a general election on it all the time. I said, why do the elections always come? Some of the poor pets, you know what? They had to cook something for themselves and try and do their study for their exams, because Mike was director of elections for the TD and I was stuck in the office and I couldn't go. You wouldn't get home till 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night because letters had to go out and this had to be done. It is not easy juggle life. It really isn't. You have to find a balance. I work part-time now and I don't have kids at home. I have a husband, as I already said, but I have to juggle my days off to attend meetings, and there seems to be meetings all the time. You have your municipal district meeting, you have your ETB board meeting, you have the youth work that comes from the team. It spreads out like it's got testicles, this council, because you've got to go into different organisations, and underneath all those organisations are subcommittees, and you're expected to be there. And that with my volunteer work, it just takes a lot of juggling. I think the two things is definitely childcare. It didn't apply to me, but it does apply to the younger women going forward. And I do think that they will have to encounter a lot of difficulties with juggling family and meetings and the work, but it is surmountable and you will be able to do it with help and backup at home. It's very important. The maternity leave, of course, is very important. But I do see another flip side to that as well, because when you're on maternity leave, you're not there, you're not in work. And people have short memories. Sometimes they say, oh, you can't get her, she's gone for another 6 months or whatever, and she's not there. And maybe if a person replaces you, I'm not sure if you can co-opt someone on or not under the new legislation, but if you can, suddenly they're the knight in shining armour and you're at home, so it has a flip side to it. So one thing I would love to see, but that's over to the executive table over here, is that if there was a childcare facility within the council building that you could bring your children in, and they, like a creche while the meetings are on and things, but that isn't happening in Kerry County Council anyway. But in some employments it is happening, and there are places, so it might be something that is worth thinking about, and that would certainly encourage a lot of younger women with young children to come into the job and to give time to it. But again, we'll be looking over to the sidelines here and see if they're taking any notice of us. But I think it would be a great help if there was a bit of childcare for people.
Brilliant, thanks, Marie. And Marie, it's actually a common theme again, or whatever. All of our candidates, all those involved, whatever in local politics. They're all involved in communities and they're all involved in volunteerism or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like in people's DNA, isn't it, or whatever. So, Marie, I console myself or whatever with my children, when they're cooking for themselves and sorting themselves out. I feel I'm resilience building for them. Yes, what I'm doing. So I'm giving them life skills is what I'm doing, whatever. So make myself feel better anyway.
I absolutely agree with you. My son loves doing the ironing now.
So listen, I'm going to wrap up the session now. Can I just, before I do that, just to say thank you very much to each and every one of you, our panel contributors. We're fortunate to have such a group of strong, able and resilient women that represent us across the council, including obviously our 4 participants that are here or whatever today, to thank Aoife for her 10-year service and to wish her well. To wish the outgoing councillors the best for the election, and to very importantly, I suppose, express our thanks on behalf of all of us involved in our communities to everyone who is going to put their name on a ballot paper as part of the democratic process. You know, it's a very brave thing to do, and I congratulate everyone that's involved in that process, and to wish everyone the absolute best in the election process. It's an exciting few weeks that's ahead or whatever for people. So just to say congratulations and coming this far, and to wish everyone absolutely the best as part of the process. And also, before we finish up, I'll be handing over to Christy, because I know he wants to say a few words, but just to say thanks to Christy and to Padraig for their excellent presentation today, that gave us a wonderful and in-depth oversight in relation to the council, how it works, and the I suppose different functions and powers of the councillor, and I suppose clearly explaining to us the role between the executive and the councillors. Very, very important information for people to have, and also to our representatives from the PPN, to Breeda and Anne-Marie. You know, again, thank you very much for the insight or whatever that you shared, and particularly, Anne-Marie, to yourself for the enthusiasm and the by which you shared it, because it's wonderful to see, I suppose, what can be achieved, you know, outside of being a councillor and the process or whatever, from, you know, volunteerism and community engagement and so on. And look, just to say again, thanks to everyone in Kerry County Council for organising this event. I've been dealing directly with Caroline and Sean as part of the process. So look, thanks to yourselves and to all the team. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out or whatever, but to all of the team that have been involved in organising this event. It's been really very, very good and very, very insightful. And there's definitely quite a lot of actions, I think, that will come out of this event or whatever, that hopefully Kerry County Council will look at in terms of future initiatives. And look to everyone that mobilised this event or whatever from an IT perspective, to Catherine as whatever as well. So just to say thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for their time. So I'll hand over to Christy, I think, that wants to say a few words.